So revenue is always number one for me because it is the purest, easiest measure. Even if you don't know how to do math, you can do math because the bank statement does it for you. It shows you deposits.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I like revenue in that sense because it gives you an indication. It's a trailing indicator because you did the work yesterday and typically you get paid after the fact, but
Mhm.
it's a pure indicator. Another one, if you have employees, are labor costs,
Mhm.
kind of keeping an eye in relation labor to revenue. Uh, that by far is the one that gets abused the most. And I put that in air quotes for the listeners,
Yeah.
but that gets abused, kind of like we were teasing about earlier about the average job. If
Mhm.
we're not upselling or if we're not doing the proper job and we have to come back and
Yep.
do like a courtesy service
Yep.
clean, efficiencies get eaten away. And
Yeah.
people are people. We have good days and we have bad days. So you've got to stay on those things to make sure that revenue and those labor costs are mirroring what they should.
Welcome to the Carpet Cleaner Success Podcast, a show created to inspire carpet cleaning business owners to build their own thriving residential and commercial cleaning business. Your host, John Clendenning, has built and sold successful cleaning businesses for multiple six figures over his 30-year career and is the founder of Carpet Cleaner Marketing Masters, a digital agency that turns your online marketing into a lead generation machine. Tune in as John shares proven tips, strategies, and expert interviews to help fast track your success in the carpet cleaning industry.
Hey, welcome back for another exciting episode of the Carpet Cleaner Success Podcast. So today I've got a really special guest for you. It's Chris Papin, and Chris is a CPA and attorney and helps small businesses with that whole thought around tax planning and running your business properly, putting the right hat on and stuff like that. Some of us get to our 40s and 50s and go, dang, I wish I'd done some stuff differently, 10, 20 years ago, set things up differently, all of that kind of stuff. So I get asked these questions a lot in our coaching sessions and when I'm talking with the industry on a regular basis. And I just thought Chris would be a great guy to bring on the show, and let's unpack some of this and try not to get too nerdy, but let's get into the weeds a little bit and see what you need to do to think like the CEO of your cleaning business, your home service business, and not just the as Michael Gerber would say in the E-Myth, not just the technician, but you're actually running the business so you can maybe be on the golf course and the business still runs on its own at some point in your life. So anyways, if that makes sense, welcome, Chris. Thanks for showing up on the show today.
John, it's a pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity, and this is our small little world. So hopefully we get something to share that's meaningful to folks.
Hey, so talk a little bit about you. Let's introduce you to the crowd. Who's Chris? What got you into this line of work, and all that kind of stuff? What keeps you ticking? What makes you happy?
Well, that may take up the whole episode, but I'll try to do an elevator speech version.
Fair enough.
So Chris Papin, attorney and CPA. I've got a CPA firm and a law firm. We represent small businesses and small business owners. Kind of our tagline is, this is who we are and who we represent. So we really don't know any other way, right?
Yeah.
But I think this resonates with folks because they forget that sometimes their service providers can be a wealth of knowledge in a lot of different ways.
Hmm.
A new startup, we predominantly focus on service-based businesses.
Yeah.
So carpet cleaners, uh, I'm going to say trades is probably a better way to
Yeah.
frame around that.
Yeah. The blue
Like you've
collar
got
side of
people
things, right? Yeah.
that are doing
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Even if it's just clicking buttons, advertising, insurance,
Okay.
technology, software. But in this bubble, most people have both roles, kind of like you illustrated. They are both the technician and the
Hmm.
entrepreneur. You're the owner and the operator.
Yeah.
So that, because we represent several hundreds of businesses any given year and have several thousands of experiences over this time, I might see something 6 or 7 times this month that you've never
Hmm.
experienced before. So we try to position ourselves in this board of directors type role where we're sitting shoulder to shoulder with business owners to
Yeah.
help them reason through and decide on what's best or how to grow or whatever those things might be. Now they might jettison a few things off to us, like CPA firm will do tax and accounting filings, law firm can do entity formations, buy sell, exit planning type stuff. But
Yeah.
really it's the decision making. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck because they don't know where to begin, they don't know where they're going to end, and it's hard to kind of figure out that quicksand in between.
And it really is. And just as a little caveat on mine, like I've owned everything under, well, eventually under a corporate. I think it was 2002, 2003 we incorporated. So it wasn't a sole proprietorship as we grew and we're heading towards that seven-figure mark and buying other businesses. And even when we went to sell the businesses off, we sold them off as entities under the corp and eventually sold the corp off to the person who bought the final group of things.
Yeah.
So without that liability, they took like I was able to offshoot the liability and learned that from my accountant and lawyer. Both of those we were able to funnel off some cash into a holding co in the year before and prep with all that. I wouldn't have known any of this. I didn't know you at the time, but I needed to talk to a one of you to figure all that out. So what are some of those mistakes that you see sort of these average, like, because you've worked with a bunch of them, what are some of the big common mistakes that you see come up time and time again that could really be nipped in the bud if they planned early, met with somebody like you early, something like that?
Yeah, I see two things that happen the most common. The first is kind of the reality of life. I didn't know that I was going to end up in this business. I thought I might try it, and then 18 months later, here it all comes. Like I
Mhm.
got job one, and then I got job 15, and I'm overwhelmed, and I'm trying to keep up with myself. So we didn't really go in with an intentionality, and I
Mm.
get that. And I'm not saying
Yep.
don't. Like if you have an opportunity to earn, go earn. But you do have to pause and remember once a business, you get to play by business standards, regardless of whether you know them or not. Ignorance is
Mm.
not an excuse. So one that we use as an example that I think people can relate to is, hey, I got a few jobs, then I hired somebody and I just started paying them. Cool. What about a workers' comp laws? Because
Yeah.
the insurances or these government regulations lay over the top. You can get fined $1,000 a day for not properly complying. That can bury
Yeah.
people. Now,
Yeah.
I get that that one's an easy one and a lot of people know it, but it's a good example of sometimes you got to stop, dot the I's and cross the T's because you don't want to miss something. The
Yeah. And
second,
I'm in Canada here, just so to put a little the other
yeah,
like the on that workers comp. So what do you guys call it in the States? I'm just trying to remember the numbers from every the 1080 or like your employee like in Canada, you can't subcontract. And you got to know your laws. We got clients in UK and New Zealand and Australia, and I get to ask these questions and throughout the entire United States, most of our clients. And we get asked that question a lot. Can I have employees as subcontractors? Is that okay, John? And I'm going, well, around here it isn't because unless they own their own van, their own equipment, and you're just one of their many jobs, it doesn't apply. So they have to be on payroll, and then you've got to deal with all your federal and state laws around that.
so I tease people on this because in the US, independent contractor and employee have two different meanings. And
Yeah.
and it's similar in most jurisdictions that kind of follow like a English or French based rule of law. But if somebody says to me, can I have an employee as an independent contractor? I immediately
Mm.
say, no, you defined them in the first statement. They are an employee, move on.
Yeah.
You're trying to get away with something, whether it's intentional or unintentional.
Yeah.
And just because you call it that does not mean that your Department of Labor or functional equivalent is going
Yeah.
to agree with you. And all of these different tick boxes,
Yeah.
either they're a business or they're not. It's pretty simple. If you're the only person they're working with, they're an employee. Live with it and move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, and then and deal with what that means exactly. The
Right.
WSIBs, everything else like that. Yeah, it's like sometimes I think it was my granny told me this one years ago, but my from Ireland. But when I was just a wee boy, she was like, John, if you live life, try and live life the easy way, it's going to be really hard. If you live it the hard way, you're going to have an easier time. And I think Granny had some good advice, like just do it right from day one and stop trying to pull the wool over Uncle Sam's eyes, because pretty good chance that's not going to happen for the whole long term of a business.
Well, the struggle is by the time you figure it out, sometimes it's too
Mm,
late, plus penalty, plus interest.
yeah,
And you can't overcome those things. If
yeah,
it's good faith, I made a mistake last week and we're trying to correct it, you can overcome that.
yeah,
But to get everything reclassified, plus, whatever your payroll taxes are that you didn't pay, penalty,
yeah,
interest, and everything else, that's where people get in trouble. It really is. So
Yeah,
you're
and I
spot
think
on in
yeah,
that sense.
yeah, and we'll get to your second point in a second because you mentioned there was two, but
Yeah.
the other one is that so from my world, we help businesses market. We're growth partners. We help them grow. We help them market. We consult them on things that work really, really well to grow seven-figure home service businesses, which is rare. Less than 1% of home service businesses
Yeah.
make it to seven figures, according to national stats that we've come across on many places. And most stay as solopreneurs, just like the solopreneur stat, like 85, 86% of solopreneurs never go beyond solopreneur, right? So all of these kind of stats fit in. And how do you get out of that? Well, you do things differently. One of those things I always talk about is marketing is not an expense. Marketing generates a sales conversation. Sales conversations generate revenue, and then you keep retention on the back end and build the machine.
Yeah.
The other one is that knowing your numbers and legal and financial planning is not a someday or an a necessary evil or an expense either. It is a critical function like marketing of business that needs its own line item, needs its own planned budget. It's part of day one. And again, I get it. A lot of people don't think that way, and you and I both know that, but start thinking that way from this moment forward. If you're hearing this conversation, and it isn't that primary focus, where if it's the once a year that you talk to your tax provider, probably not enough to be in business. If you're planning this to be an actual thing that you exit from someday, sell, have organized well enough to sell for multiples of EBITDA and all of the fun stuff that you can get to, versus just a hobby that, you'll discard the truck on Kijiji someday and start again, right? So, or do something else. If that's the plan, that's a hobby. But if you're actually running this as a business, you can grow it to where you are golfing a couple days a week and the business runs with staff and teams, but you have to be intentional from day one, including this part of it, the legal and financial. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're spot on. Number two dovetails with this in the
Yep.
sense of misunderstanding financials.
Okay.
Because the folks I work with have a pure intent to
Yeah.
be in it and kind of know what's going on, but they think in the terms of bank statement ins and outs. They don't think in profit and loss and balance sheet. They don't think
Yeah.
in terms of tax. So, the common faux pas that plays out in all of this stuff is debt service distorts the way cash flow plays.
Mm.
I'm saying words and people are going, what's debt service? What's a thing? Like, did you buy a truck? Did you get a loan on your truck?
Yeah.
Those are the things that it's completely normal. But your bank account can have $0 and you can have money owed. And nobody
Yeah.
gives a rip what your bank balance is.
Yeah.
So if it's taxes, if it's debt, if it's all these other things, this is, I'll set this up. We'll talk about it later, but all of these different things. And I've got a book, 168 hours, that outlines all of the
Oh,
different
cool.
business functions, all of the things that are in a business plan. But what it really boils down to is you got to focus on the five or six that matter to you, one of which
Mm-hmm.
better be numbers. And I'm not saying you have to do it on your own. You can hire a guy like me to translate it for you, but
Yeah.
you better damn well have an understanding, because we assume that the bank balance has a certain amount in it. And that means I get a certain dollars that come home. And that assumption is
Way
85% of the
wrong.
time what burns people. Yeah.
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 No, I don't agree with that because cash flow cash flow is king to keep the business alive, but it's not like, oh, look, my bank's balance is this. I can go buy that, which is a really common thing in not just businesses, but just the average consumer's life. Oh, look at it, honey, our bank balance has this. We can go do that without any thought of, again, what debt is against that, what's coming up, and then the emergencies of life in business. The technician can literally drive the van without oil in it. Not saying that anybody did that. Carl, he bought my business, so I can mention him now. And have the rods blow through the front hood of the truck, about 45 minutes away from the shop on a Tuesday morning while I was heading away camping. Right. So that can happen in a real business where you need to buy a new van and like the unexpected, and you better make sure that your whole entire financial plan isn't, let me look at my bank account today and see what balance it is and make
Right.
decisions off of that. So,
And I would add to this, if you're looking at your bank account, you're looking at what happened yesterday. It's just a history of what you already know because you swiped the card
yep.
or tapped or whatever your version is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What most are worried about is what is about to happen, where the dollar is going to come from. And that's a little bit of an art. I mean, I know as well as John does how much money you're going to make tomorrow.
Hmm.
We don't. It's a guess.
We
It's an
don't.
educated
Yep.
guess.
Yep.
But with certain metrics in place, hey, I made 10 phone calls today. I'm probably going to close one job. One job on average is $1,000. That means I've got $1,000 coming in the next week. You can
Yeah.
use those reasonable estimates to start to figure out how you should
Yeah.
behave. What are the next steps that you should do? Um, the
Yeah.
technician, the minute you show up to a house, you immediately know four things that the homeowner does not know.
Hmm. Okay.
And sometimes you choose to say them, sometimes you don't. But
Yep.
it's the same thing in financial land. And
Yep.
that's where we want to be. We want to see those blind spots. We want to help people overcome or at least try to anticipate through I super dumb it down. I want rules of thumb as simple as, 10% of your revenue is going to go in your pocket. I know
Yep.
that's oversimplified, but I want it that
But
way so people can have a predictability around it.
yeah, that's like I read the book Profit First, and one of the mastermind groups I'm in, one of the guys is a Profit First coach or whatever. So he brought it to us
Mhm.
for 90 minutes. Then we read the book, and it's just the idea behind it is like having I think there was one, I don't know if it's what's his name, Dave Ramsey or somebody else, but jars, like have take your
Yep.
paycheck and put it into, or your different accounts and stuff like that. Same idea. Make sure that you allocate well and know what that means, becomes part of your financial plan instead of just sort of bootstrapping it, so that you do have that intentionality that so much of every dollar goes back to marketing to get the next customer, so much goes towards an emergency fund, so much goes towards servicing a debt and things like that, and then somebody like you can help out where or somebody looking at the numbers or understanding the numbers, you don't run into the situation like we ran into with a couple of clients where everything's growing from a leads and bookings and organic reputation and pay per click is generating thousands of dollars a month. And then, I still get a call that say, hey, John, we're down. Like we've been with you for 5 years and we're down in the last 6 months or whatever. Revenue wise, like we're off 10, 15% off of the same month last year. And I'm like looking at all our numbers and we meet on a call and I'm going, well, so everything on our side is up. So either your booking percentage has dropped, or what's your current average job now? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when I last asked you that last time, like 3 years ago, we were able to look it up on your CRM or whatever, your QuickBooks or whatever, and your average job at that time was sitting about $450. Well, let me look that up now. Oh my gosh, John, it's down at $308. $308 is my average job. And I said, okay, so you're off by 33%. So we're working our butts off for you. You're working your butt off, and your technicians have slipped and nobody caught it. And
Yeah.
it was hiding in the numbers, right? And
And
unless
I
you watch
think
your numbers, you wouldn't have known.
this accountability scares people too, because
Mm.
now I have to discipline somebody that outside of my family I see the most,
Yeah.
or I have to change my behavior to
Yeah.
do the extra thing, or
Yeah.
the one we see the most is people, they start kind of slacking on Fridays.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, maybe it turns from a full Friday to a half Friday and then not a Friday, and then revenue's at 80%. We're like,
Yep.
wonder why. I wonder why. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
working
Yeah.
80% of the days, so I have 80% of the revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not all doctors, or we can't take Wednesday off and go golfing, right? So we don't charge doctors' wages either, right? So when should an owner start doing this proactive tax planning? And things like that. Like, what if we're gonna say, okay, they've bought into what John and Chris are talking about now, we do have to think this thing through a little bit more. Things like tax planning and legal planning and stuff like that. But tax planning is the sort of the annual, at least it's cycles, right? Legal
Yeah.
planning should be, decided, brought up every so often to see if it still aligns with what your plans are. Are you handing it off to the family and need to do that? Oh no, your kids don't want it anymore. Okay, now what is your plan? And we have to adjust, but that's more multi-year. But tax planning is sort of like aim at it, see how close you hit, right? Ready, fire, aim, fire, aim, see how close you hit. But you can plan through the year and then see how it turned out at the end of the year and make adjustments for next year. So when should somebody start proactively tax planning? How does that work in your world?
So the simple answer is yesterday. I mean, the best day is yesterday, right? What a lot of people, I think, default into is, oh, it's year end. So
Mm,
I should start making phone calls because we're doing year-end planning. And in
yeah.
my world, that's too late. because
Way
we've
too
got
long.
60, 90-day runways where you may not even get admitted into the roster if you called me in December because, setup may
Yeah.
take us 30 or 45 days. So
Yeah.
the way I've always tried to approach this with folks, and I'm going to answer this from a startup's perspective because I think a lot of
Okay.
people are conscious of dollars. You may not need somebody monthly. You may not need the highest level of engagement, but if you DIY'd your startup, maybe used an online platform or something like that, didn't really put structure to it, you better be talking to somebody at least 6 or 8 months in advance so that you know what's coming at you.
Yeah.
Now, if you talk to somebody and structured your startup, you might have some expectation about best practices. So maybe you can cut that timeline down and say, hey, maybe I can check in into Q3 or something along those lines. But
Yep.
I've always looked through this a little bit of a sarcastic tone here, but the running joke is always we get a phone call the last week of the year every year.
Yep.
Oh my God, it's an emergency. I'm thinking about buying a Range Rover SUV. Who thinks about spending 120 grand with 2 days notice? Most people are not that
Yeah.
impulsive, especially in family-owned businesses. So you've been thinking about it for a while. When you
Yeah.
start thinking about it, if you are serious, make the call then. That's the
Yeah.
reality when the space should be, so that you've got time to digest properly, not based on
Yeah.
AI or your neighbor or, oh,
Yeah.
I saw some other guy ride off his G-Wagon on TikTok. You might be able to, but is that really a wise financial investment based on all the factors you got going on? That's what
Yeah.
matters for you.
And I think that that prudent conversation, whether I am considered thrifty, is a very polite way of wording me because I've always been self-employed, so I've always been worried about the next shoe that's going to drop. So
Mhm.
planning, like being the squirrel planning, and in the cleaning industry in the Northeast, you're also used to January, February, March, sometimes April, depending on the year. The odd year May, is just absolute crap because the weather's terrible, and more than half of your lead flow and even your existing customer repeat and retention, all that, they're not interested in the sloppy season, right? So,
Sure.
so you've got to be, you still got to pay the bills, you still got to pay the mortgage, you still want to keep the employees, you don't want to start having brand new employees every spring and those kinds of things. So you've got to be like a squirrel and hoard your nuts and all of that stuff. And that
Yeah.
always was our analogy around here is like, we talked about, how much did we get buffered in the bank account before the off season that we could still market through the off season? And when was that bounce, as we always talked about, before the year took back off again? Because it's
Yeah.
like it's a delayed bank account bounce, right? So the season might have kicked off in April, May, but the bank account will bottom out in like late May, June on some bad years and stuff like that. So knowing all of that, you're not making your G-Wagon decision, as we called it, without like, that G-Wagon decision. I don't care if you like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki or not, but in my world, that G-Wagon decision is bought by an asset. That ain't bought by a bank account. I want to build asset structure and have the dividends and whatever pay it off. And if I lose the asset, I decide that the thing tied to that asset, the toy tied to that asset, as part of it also has to go out the door as well. But again, I'm a far more financially prudently disciplined person than most, and I get that. So, but I agree with you. The fellow that's thinking of keeping up with the neighbors and the Joneses and his buddy that's an HVAC business owner who just bought the big King Cab truck with dualies or whatever, the 350 and stuff like that, and decides he needs that for his carpet cleaning business for some reason, just to keep up with his neighbor, better be doing that on a decision that isn't going to come back and bite him and bankrupt him, 6, 12, 18 months down the road because it was sitting on the books and you could have seen it. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and something you said inside of here, I mean, all cyclical businesses, let me rephrase that. All businesses have cyclical tendencies. Some
Yeah.
are truly seasonal, but for carpet cleaners, if you're in the Northeast and your slow time is, I don't know, March, April, May, June, like
Yep.
as that's when you do your financial planning. You're not doing client service work.
Yeah.
So
Not
you
as
can sit
much. You
down and
have more
structure
free
things in
time.
a
Yeah.
different way. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. No, that's always it. So what financial metrics do you think the average owner at least monitor monthly, like on their own, check in with their accountant, whatever? Like what are those for the service businesses you deal with that you think are sort of like, the core four, core six, whatever that is?
Sure. So revenue is always number one for me because it is the purest, easiest measure. Even if you don't know how to do math, you can do math because the bank statement does it for you. It shows you deposits.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I like revenue in that sense because it gives you an indication. It's a trailing indicator because you did the work yesterday and typically you get paid after the fact, but
Mhm.
it's a pure indicator. Another one, if you have employees, are labor costs,
Mhm.
kind of keeping an eye in relation labor to revenue. Uh, that by far is the one that gets abused the most. And I put that in air quotes for the listeners, but that gets abused, kind of like we were teasing about earlier about the average job. If
Mhm.
we're not upselling or if we're not doing the proper job and we have to come back and
Yep.
do like a courtesy service
Yep.
clean, efficiencies get eaten away. And
Yeah.
people are people. We have good days and we have bad days. So you've got to stay on those things to make sure that revenue and those labor costs are mirroring what they should.
Yeah, and I
The
guess in retail we talk about like, cost of goods sold. I sold a bunch of products on Amazon for years. It was one of the many things I dabbled in. So was up to 50,000 a month at one point selling bamboo utensils to from out of China to in little kits across Amazon and stuff like that. It was a neat marketing experiment, right? $50,000 sounds ooh, no, you take home maybe five, right? So the rest of it is
right.
all eaten up by the longshoremen you have to pay and the shipping. It's insane. It was a crazy business, anyway. But cost of goods sold became a big thing. And in our cleaning world, that those direct tied to the job, the gas, the solution, and the labor,
Mhm.
whether you're the guy
Mhm.
doing it, make sure you run the math, because how are you ever going to replace yourself if you don't know if you're earning enough to cover Tommy the technician that should take over your seat and that kind of stuff. So yes, know those, and know that, yeah, if you're drifting beyond, we found that it was roughly about 50%. If you could, cost of any job, roughly, depending on the price you sell it, but roughly about 50% should go to labor, all in. That includes employee taxes and everything else. The labor
Yeah.
eat plus the solution and the ability to get to that job, right? So, and then the other 50% is all the rest of it, the marketing and the office expenses and employee or employer wages, the owner wages, and hopefully a profit at the end of the day that still accumulates beyond your wage. You don't take everything home, leave some of it
Right.
behind for growth and reinvestment and all that stuff. So, yeah.
So
So,
you said two things that are key. I obviously didn't go to them first because they're harder measures.
yeah.
But if you are someone engaging in marketing or online ads or whatever it is that you do, it doesn't necessarily need to be an elaborate marketing plan. Are you measuring results on that?
Mhm.
How? I don't really care because I'm not a
Yeah.
guy that wants to get overly elaborate.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is literally, did I go to my centers of influence and ask them, do you have any? Did I go to my realtors and say, hey, do you have any new listings I can go buy and clean up? It could be
Mhm.
that simple
Yep.
because that's low hanging fruit and you've got to track those. You've got to know who to call. You've got to know good times. What I have found is when times are tight, those centers of influence, you can ask and say, hey, I'm slow. I'm willing to give you a 10% discount. It's
Mhm.
better than zero revenue in the door. So it allows you to manipulate the other numbers.
Yeah.
Then you get to that owner profit. Like we all need to know what we can take home. And that's what changes over the years. Like what your expectation is, if I'm funding retirement or if I'm not, or if I own a building
Yeah.
or if I'm not, like all of these other long-term decision points are driven by how much money do I have to take home that I can freely spend without sacrificing all of the other pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah,
You
and
don't
without being the
take
guy that decides to work
not pay
16
anything.
hours a day and burn the candle on both ends because you don't
Yeah.
want to hire Nancy in the office to answer the phone so you can go out and make those sales calls. I call it the core forever engine that a lot of guys forget because there was sort of like an easy money train for a little while. You could stand in front of Groupon early 2010s and whatever, then you could stand in front of other like Facebook ads and things like that, and everybody got quantitative easing, they got money, and then we had COVID, then they all got their pips, and like it's just there's money, 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 and we're now back to the real world where I started 30 years ago, grandpa started 50 years ago, all that kind of stuff, where,
Yes.
well, no, there isn't just this money train that to start a business you just put your name on a plaque, show up, and the world will be the path to your door because everybody's paying for it. We're back to where middle class are tighter, like it's right. So people are more wise with their dollar. It doesn't mean you have to be a discount provider. You can still be a premium provider, but premium provider to the right people by marketing the right way. And that isn't just always running ads. That ads complement a really well-known brand. So exactly what you said. If you are the one that all the real estate agents, all the interior designers, all the carpet stores and furniture stores, and you stop in regularly and they go, "Hey, how's it going, Chris?" And you're going, "Hey, how's it going, buddy?" Right? And you walk in with coffees and all that kind of stuff. Then yeah, when times get tight, which right now we're in a period of time where there's a weird transition, feels like 2008-9. There's a weird transition, or at least a buzz of, is AI going to take my job? What's going to happen? Is robotics? Are we going up? Are we going down? Are we investing in infrastructure? We don't know. Like, the world is doing a whole bunch of this right now, and that mixed feeling creates discretionary income pause in some people. So the market softens a little bit because people just go, "I don't know what my job's going to be like in 6 months. Maybe we don't need the couch cleaned again this year, right? Maybe we can just spot clean it and the kids can go spill pop and popcorn on the couch, on movie night again, and we don't need to call the cleaner every time, right? Those decisions get made differently when the market feels different, like when just the news cycle feels different, the price of gas feels different, right? So and in that world, business owners better know their numbers and know when they need to double down on the grassroots stuff that doesn't cost them a fortune. If you knew that you had a 3-to-1 ROI on your Google ads and you're investing 3-4 grand, 5 grand a month, and it's generating 15 grand in first time revenue, 5 goes back to Google, 5 goes to the technician, or 5, 6, 7 goes to the technician, and gas and solution, you're 50%, you got a little bit left over. That's a good front end, maybe, but your lifetime value of that client is where the big money, the 15, 20-to-1 ROI comes from, because you send mailings, stay in touch with them, and boom, for the cost of a stamp once a month, $12 a year, you retained a client, right? For $12, not bought them for $200 or $150 on pay-per-click. So again, knowing your numbers well enough to be able to say, what John just said actually makes sense, is a good point to be. And not knowing your numbers and saying what John just said and what Chris and John are talking about is over my head is probably not a good place to be, right? Trying to figure this all out, especially during tighter times. A little bit easier when everything's running freewheeling and up and to the right, but a little harder when there's those dips in the scale, right? So in the chart. So I guess we talked about cash flow a little bit, cash flow and risk. I wanted to come back to why some companies stay broke despite revenue, right? The warning signs they're missing, right? Because there's a lot of people who go, "I make a lot of money and there's still nothing left in the bank account at the end of the month. And I'm in it 5 years and it still looks the same. Even though everything seems to be, revenue's going up, I ain't got anything left." Like, what do you notice is sort of some of the big drivers of warning signs that they're maybe ignoring in that world where they are sort of myopic, only looking at the bank account, or at the end of the year, they see, "Oh, last year we made 200,000. This year maybe 280,000. Hey, honey, where'd all that money go? Because it ain't in our household." Right. So
we literally had this conversation the other day, and we're staring at the numbers. Clients up 100 grand. And we went through all the stuff. They didn't understand the tax calcs, didn't understand the conversation. And at the end of the day, the response was, "Well, it didn't feel like it." Guess what? Feelings have no place. They have no place. The data matters here. I recognize that was a frustrating spot for the client to be in, and there's other pieces of that conversation at play that are relevant. But answering your question directly, it's one of two things in my world. It's either we overcommitted on debt or buildings or growth. There's a pull of cash away from core operations, or our business is our piggy bank. We just take money as we need it, and then I'll put it back when, or I'll just leave the next deposit in. But then you're chasing because you took your operational capital out, and that's where you're not behaving like a business owner. You are not operating as the owner, the CEO. You're doing what's in your best interest to the detriment of the business. And
treating your bank account like a payday loan company, really. Like that becomes that method, that mindset where you'll never catch up because you're always sort of chasing good money after bad. So,
well, the percentages change. So we're teasing about like, hey, you're going to keep 50%, but if you're payday loaning this, all of a sudden it's 60 or 70%. Well, the rest of that's probably going to go to tax. So you just did all the work to retain none of it. Is that really where you want to be? And I didn't mean to get there. I've got to play catch up. I get it. But this is where
Yeah.
strategic partnerships with banks, lending, getting capital stretched to where you can chip away at a different way. But there's a cost to every single one of those decisions as you go. The
Yeah.
the one we see in this industry the most is I want insert brand here, but the fancy van. For what?
Yes. Yep.
It does just the same as the 1996 Ford Ecoline.
Yeah, with a good.
It
Oh my
drives
God!
from
You know what I
A
mean?
to
Like, no,
B.
you were preaching to the choir. I've never bought a brand new. Like, listen to this, guys. Anybody like the podcast here? I had never bought a brand new cleaning van in my life. I loved them 2 to 3 years off lease with the shelves already put in by some plumber or whatever who bought them brand new. I got them white, labeled the like logo the whole thing up, full wrap, so you couldn't tell. Like, as long as it didn't have rust on it, mechanically sound. Took it to my mechanic. I'm like, I get to make the same amount of money every single day that the van's going to make. I just get to pay 1/3 the cost versus leasing or
Yeah.
trying to buy out the van and the whatever, right? So yeah, that's a big one that I see a lot of people become focused on. Oh, I own a business, I get to buy all this new stuff, never running the math to say, hey, what if I could find something just as reliable that saves me three, four, $500 per van on the road per month? What does that mean in the long term? Right.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
this is that forward-looking, longer term conversation again. And it doesn't matter
Yeah.
whether it's a car or a cleaning solution or a tool or a software. It's about how can I be more efficient? Where is a true value proposition? I
Yeah.
want is generally not a value proposition.
Yeah.
It's a need and an efficiency based for your business. Then it can spill over into the I want. And what
Mhm.
I see is the emotional creeps in. I want the sexy thing or I want the status
Mhm.
symbol.
Yeah.
Makes me feel good. Okay, at what cost? Oh, well, but I'm going to save on taxes by doing that, so I can justify what is a bad decision because I'm going to save on taxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. I mean, once the money's gone, it's gone. You've got to earn it again, and it's too hard to earn. Save it.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with that so much because the other one becomes debt service, as we talked about. As you buy these
Yeah.
things, if you don't qualify for a low interest loan, you can't get it from like your bank or tap into some sort of like really low interest line, which is what we actually with ours. It was our insurance company. Every time I went to buy a van, I had to pre get get insurance to be able to drive it off the lot, kind of idea. And so as I'm looking around and saying, hey, I'm about to go look at some vans for the company and all that kind of stuff, so I want to make sure we just have trip insurance on it. And they come back and like eventually our insurance company said, oh, we've started becoming a lender as well. Would you like us to compete against whatever rate you've got from your bank? And they would always beat it by like 1% or 1.5%. So we would
Yeah.
negotiate the very best rate we could with their bank and then go back to these guys and go, cool, we get to save another 80, 100, whatever, $120 a month in interest. Pure profit, pure cash back in the pocket, right? For every piece of equipment we bought. It was just like, let's find our lowest. And other people go, oh, I need it. Well, I guess if you know you've got jobs lined up and you can earn it and you don't qualify for low interest, maybe that becomes that decision. But that would be a great call for your CPA is to say, hey, I've got the opportunity to add this whole new service wing on. I want to start doing pressure washing. I want to start doing duct cleaning. It's going to cost me $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to buy a trailer mounted duct cleaning unit that we can tow behind our van. Based because the interest I'm going to be able to get on it is consumer rate. It's terrible. It's 15%, whatever, 12%. Is that still a good decision? Here's what I do know I've got lined up in work. Beyond that, I'd have to build the business from there. And that'd be a great conversation to have with your CPA.
I
Because
100% agree. And
yeah.
paying attention to vendor financing versus bank financing versus
Yeah.
alternatives. We watch this in medicine a lot because the vendors will show up, oh, yeah, don't pay us down. But they are by far the most expensive financing, but it's
Yeah.
not in financing. They phrase it as a lease payment and all this other stuff. Like just the
Yeah.
cost of equipment gets really expensive. And then
Yep.
my cynicism lays over the top. All this so your guys can go out and drop it and wreck it.
Yeah.
It's going to be
You have
broken
worked with
anyway.
home service, haven't you, Chris? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well done. No, and that becomes part of it because I think we're in a subscription mentality, whether we don't need to go around conspiracy theory rabbit holes and you'll own nothing and you'll like it. But there is a point where we rent everything, we lease everything, we subscription everything. So it's become easier for these vendor finances just to say, oh yeah, this is the same as your Netflix and your Spotify and your hot tub and your whatever. Just add that on like that, right? And so we make all these bad decisions at home, right? We're not watching, next thing, death by 1,000 subscriptions and
Yeah.
that way. And now we're making those same decisions because we take that same person and we're running a business, right? And it feels the same, but to be prudent, you probably shouldn't have been doing it at home either. But in the business, let's be a lot more strict because businesses will ebb and flow. It is not,
Yes.
again, heyday and rosy and green grasses for the next 20, 30 years. And then you sell to somebody who wants to pay you 5 times more than you even asked for it. And off you go into the sunset. It is going to be crap hit the fan years. And you better be able to, white knuckle it through and come out the other side and maybe double your market penetration because you're the only one that was able to market and make it through while your competitors backed off on their promotions because they didn't have the wherewithal and the money. And you had a little bit of seed capital saved up to market through a slow time or to make a transition as the marketplace changes. So, which kind of leads us to sort of that logical point. If we're kind of saying, okay, set up right. If you didn't do it day one, the best time was yesterday. The next best time is today, right? At least get it started, think it through, have somebody smart in your corner helping you know what numbers to look at and plan, make decisions based on data, not emotions. All great stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then we're going to say, okay, well, how do we, if you're 10, 15 years into this thing, you at least have an eye towards what is exit look like. You don't just want to wind it down to nothing, right? It's got to be building something. Solopreneur, maybe as we talked about before we jumped on, buy the property that, so a good friend of mine, Pierre, owned his building. He actually renovated the whole upstairs and turned it into their retirement suite, but owned the building. Right beside was the yoga studio that he rented to. Right beside was the other guy, whatever. Over the 20 years that he owned the building, it appreciated in value like crazy, right? So good on him. So he created that equity value of something that was paid for that he would have had to rent anyways. He needed a shop for the vans and to do the area rugs and have the team show up and stuff like that. Well, now he was able to buy something instead of, and now it's the asset that he can even turn into apartment as he did, retire in it, sell things off and stuff like that. So how do we start thinking of exit planning? How early do we start thinking of an exit planning, and how do we put that into our brain as we're sort of trying to just keep the business going?
Yeah, the exit plan. I mean, here's the clickbait of all clickbait, right? Everybody will exit their business. The question is, will you choose your path, or is the path going to be dictated to you? And that one hits hard for some people. The best time to plan it is in the beginning, because if you are going to be an aggressive growth, maybe go multi-company and then sell to some sort of acquisition group, we need to structure the business straight out of the gate with that in mind so we can get some tax benefits that way. There's a clock. And if we can meet that clock, then there's benefits. Now, if you are going to extract cash, own and operate, kind of, it's going to be your family business, it's going to be your cash cow, we might take a different approach. Or let's say this is a second career deal. I'm going to own it and operate it for 10 years. How do I extract the most value out of that? Again, different paradigm. So there's 2 or 3 different fundamental ways to think about your exit, but there is nothing wrong with operate, extract all the value, close the doors, and not sell it. That is a permissible way to do it, and tons of people have over the years. They bought buildings, they funded their retirement account, and they just closed. But if you want something different than that, then you need to build towards something different than that, which means you need systems. You need all the infrastructure to be able to sell.
And I think that moment is that part you want to think about is if you are an employee, right? You can make 70, 80, 90,000, $100,000 a year in the cleaning industry as an employee, at a great company, as a, maintenance manager at an office. But like, there's a whole bunch of ways that you can, sort of earn that income that would be sort of like a baseline tier 1 you're trying to aim at as a own the business, right? But the own the business, you've got all the sleepless nights. You wake up at 4 a.m. worrying about this and that at the cortisol spike. You got all of that stuff that as an employee, you just go home. Like you just go home and watch Netflix, right? And stuff like that. So if you're going to take on all of that extra pressure and risk and stress and workload and up leveling your skills, you better have a plan that if you are going to extract all the cash and just close the doors, it's because that went to an asset that creates equity of some sort. You didn't extract it all and go to Disney, right, every year, right, and stuff like that. You
Correct.
still have to think of, I don't have a 401k, what do I do? Right, kind of idea, right? So that's got to be so whether it's the business becomes the asset and you can exit for multiples, whether it becomes the property, whether it becomes investments, because you just extract all the cash and pay yourself in investment funds or whatever, you still have to have a plan with that money. It's still got to go somewhere that builds something over time, or you probably be farther ahead being an employee somewhere and just make the cash and be on payroll.
We've teased about this, but it'll land in the right way. But there's lots and lots and lots of people that are a landlord. They just pay their rent by cleaning carpets.
Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
your own landlord in that scenario. And I know I'm kind of playing on the words, but that is the
Yeah.
reality of it.
Yeah.
One is
Yeah.
the ends to the mean, or one's the means to the end of the other
Yep.
objective. So this all starts with clarity of what's your goals, what's your objectives, what's
Yeah.
your ambitions. Because if you can't enunciate those, others,
Yeah.
they can try and help you. But John, I can't pick what your goals are, and you can't pick what
Yeah.
my goals are. It's just not the way it works.
No. But clarity of them and having them. So I just did every June. So every January, I do a get your, preloaded year, get your year ready. Think of what last year looked like. Look at your numbers. We do a master class on that. It's on YouTube if anyone goes follow it. It's in history of this podcast as well. And then we do a mid-year check-in in June. So just like last month's training. And the very first part of it is all about, goals. Like, and I guarantee you it's the part that people roll their eyes at the most when we get there. It's like, no, John, just tell me how to make more money and do all this. And it really does come down to like your why. You have to put your goals in. If you don't have a why, nothing will stick. It's the same reason why, gym memberships, gyms make all of their money in January of the year. In gym memberships, nobody ever shows up. They have dead equipment by, February, right? And all of that kind of stuff. And they know it because it's like, if you don't have a goal and an intent and a big enough why, it's just good for the moment, right? So
Yep.
if you've got that goal planned and you know what that is, or as detailed as you can. Harvard did a study on graduates, and anybody who had a goal written down, it was only 3% of the graduating class. Can't remember, I think it was 1977 or 87, one of these years, and 3% of them had the goal written down. A huge chunk had the idea of what they wanted to do with their degree, but they had never written it down. It was just their thought. And then the rest of them had no clue what they're going to do. And the 3% out-earned by 10 times, checked back 20 years, out-earned by 10 times the entire 97% combined, right? So that 3 was 10x more because they left with an intent of what they're going to do and how they're going to get there. So it doesn't mean you get it right in planning. That's always that mistake. You get it right for now. And as things adjust, professionals help you go, does that still apply? Oh my gosh, I haven't thought of that. Let me go do some deep thinking. I'll get back to you. Right. And you got to make those decisions. So if a carpet cleaner was listening today, wanted to improve their financial health, what are some, like, say, 3 things that you would suggest they do right out of the gate? Like, where do they start getting their education? Who should they reach out to? Like, what are some of the things that they should look at, do, consider that would sort of help their financial health, especially in this time that things are just kind of creaking or feeling a little off?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you 4 because one's self-serving. I do have a book that
Yeah.
helps along these ways. The 168 hours. If you search for 168 and Chris Papin, you'll find it. But it's a small business owner guide that respects
Yeah,
your time.
we'll put it in the show notes as well. Send me the link and we'll put it in the show notes as well. Yeah.
It's designed to help this thought process. But the 3 things to actually answer your question that is not self-serving. First and foremost, I am a big fan of relationships and networking. You need to be in front of people. You need to be talking to people because that word of mouth and the power of that referral relationship, especially for what you're going to go do, because your boots on the ground. You're not going to drive halfway across the world. You can't clean anything virtually Or if you
Yeah.
have, let me know how. I'll sell it to you.
Elon's got some robots we're going to get someday. Give him 5 years, then maybe. But until then, yes, we're good.
But that power of community and network is number one. It's always going to be number one. If you lean into it, you've got something. Number two is whatever the clarity and the goals are. I always kind of use sports analogies here. You need to be accountable to it. Like flip over to football/soccer. We just came out of World Cup season. All the teams know the objective is score more goals than the other team. Well, in business, what's the objective?
Yeah.
That's a toughie. You've got to define it. Yes, it's make money, but how much? And how many hours a day are you going to do that? And then number three would be, are you accountable to whatever those goals you just set are? Because you can say it all day long, but if you don't do it, it isn't going to happen.
No, those are great. Because I mean, I'm just rattling through the hundreds of conversations I have a month with cleaners, thousands, tens of thousands by this point over the last 20 years consulting and doing this and working in the industry and all that stuff. And we run into a lot where, for example, if you don't understand who your ideal customer could be, what the fringe, like that, what the top 5% or 10% in our industry do differently than the other 90%, you never even heard it. They're not on the forums. They're not. So, Dan Kennedy had coined the term marketing incest. We look around and go, oh, these guys are all 3 rooms in a hall for $99. I guess I should be $89. I'll get more jobs. And then they come across people like me and I say, well, our average client that we coach and work with, their residential average is sitting north of $600, sometimes north of $800 residential customer. Well, how do they get that? Well, they start off by not advertising their price. The right people don't respond to $99 carpet cleaning. They treat it as a scam. They don't even look at the same places. They network more than if you're in a gated community and, I'd rather know the maid service and the lock service and the gardening service that's in there and have that relationship on my BNI groups and stuff like that. And, become good buds and good friends, and they know we do a great job and they've had us to their house and, oh no, don't worry about paying for us. You're one of my buddies. I'll clean your house for free, all this kind of stuff. And then next thing you know, hey, we've got a client that needs cleaning. Could you guys go give them a quote? And then all of a sudden you're in that neighborhood too. And you a little bit more because you networked properly. You did what grandpa did to run a business. Ads still work. Direct every door mail still works. Google still works. Websites still work. AI recommendations nowadays still work. Social media still works. But it all works inside an ecosphere that still run the business the way grandpa did. Be a real person in the real community. Right? So
what's interesting in what you're saying is there's a value proposition with face-to-face and dealings. Most people do business with people they like. And that's part of this recipe of being in front of and being there. I have had service techs to my house that I have never met because a dear friend of mine's a realtor. And I said, hey, who does this? And he was like, this is the best. Cool. Where do I send them money? And will you let them in for me?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little aggressive, but I trust that much in him. And it's the same thing we're trying to illustrate to folks. You want to be that trusted provider. Show up, get the deal done, get the money, move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, dovetail it back together. When you have a goal and your ideal clientele, then you'll know which real estate agents you should reach out to and which ones aren't collecting the same people, right? There are real estate agents that work with, golf course road people, right? So if you build that trusted friendship and relationship properly, if you have to read Dale Carnegie's, win friends and influence people, I don't know what skill you need to upgrade, right? I'm a painfully shy, introverted person, didn't present anything in school, stood on stage in the band because I could only see the hot chicks in the front row and everything else was dark. Literally, so if I can figure out a way around this with some Tony Robbins and Napoleon Hills and just figuring out what I don't know, I'm pretty sure anybody with even a slightly better vocabulary and skill set in being friendly could blow me out of the water. But I mean, the amount of relationships that we had that were $10, $20, $30,000 a year worth of work coming from a real estate agent or an office or a flooring store and a furniture store that you walk in the door and they're just happy to see you because you built that, right? So, there's a lot there. There's a lot there that, totally side tangent on finances and taxes and legal and stuff like that. But it's all part of the same nut. You're trying to crack that same nut.
Yeah.
How do we build a business, stay in business, aim at the right goals, and have our CPA and our legal team actually understand our vision and help us align that way? Because that's the worst case scenario, is walking into an accountant, or get a new accountant, get a new lawyer, and they just take you, oh, this is it. If they don't do any good onboarding, any good triage, they didn't go do the deep dive to ask you, okay, where are we at with everything? What are you actually planning to do? What do you know? Without that information, you could probably get a pretty smart Chat GPT to do the work in today's day and age, but it's not going to have the human nuance in it that you need from a professional. So
Yeah, you can get the work done. The way we like to say that is, you're not going to get the judgment and the wisdom that you actually want. And
nope.
people have a hard time verbalizing that. So
yeah. And again, we are in a world where,
how to ask.
Same like in marketing, you can get AI to do your marketing. There's a million people that have gone out and said, oh, I got to do blog posts. I've got Chat GPT writing me 30 blog posts a month. I'm going, cool. For how long? Well, at least a year now. That's amazing. You haven't ranked a single iota higher than you did a year ago. Why do you think that is? Maybe you don't know the strategy behind blog posts run right as part of an ecosystem with 87 other touch points that then teaches AI and SEO to pick you up, right? So you can, doesn't mean you should. So, and I'm sure the exact same feeling you guys deal with it in your world as well, as, oh, my Xero, my QuickBooks, it has all of this, AI built into it. Yeah, well, it might be able to find fraud in your credit card a little bit faster than calling us up to do it, but that's not the strategy. That's not a tax planning and life planning full strategy. So cool. So I think we helped the listeners out a lot. I think we've got a really good understanding of, either you're already on this path. We've just had people nodding their heads going, cool, you followed along, you've been doing this, you've got it. Or you went, oh crap, wow, I've heard a little bits of this before, and yeah, I really need to start attacking this. So again, we're going to put in the show notes your book. Where else can people connect you to? What should they do to follow, learn a little bit more? If anybody wants to reach out to you, all that kind of stuff. Where do you work? What, is it anywhere in the States? Are you local to your area? Give me a little bit more info.
Yeah, so CPA side, I can go 50 US states. That's
Perfect.
pretty easy. Law side, or I guess papincpa.com is the CPA side.
Okay.
Law side, I'm in Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, and New York. So
Perfect.
I will go to states that justify me, but papinlaw.com.
Okay.
We push a bunch of free material that is designed to be advice for small businesses, small business owners, to my LinkedIn.
I saw that,
if you search for my name, Chris Papin, on LinkedIn. You don't have to know all the answers. Sometimes you need some help with those, but the idea is to generate thought and give people a path, so that, oh, I've heard of that before. Let me do a little research. But all of this does not matter if you don't do something about it. So my challenge, always back to the audience, is pick one thing. I don't care what the one thing is. If you need me to tell you the one thing would be, go get your financial statements and see if you know what they actually mean. But start there, and then it's a compounding effect. No different than the way you started your business, or the way you're about to start your business if you're not there yet. Over time, it starts to, all of a sudden, I got a thing. You got to do the same thing with those financial disciplines too.
Yep. And I just noticed here, so 168 hours is obviously anybody can get it on Amazon. We'll put a link in the bottom wherever you want to send them for that. But I think that's the next obvious step too, is, start learning what you don't know. I'm one of these people that, again, I have a million books. Do I read nowadays? I probably, in the last 15 years, read maybe cover to cover less than 20 books, right? But have I listened to hundreds and hundreds of books, buy the physical copy to dog ear and highlight and put notes in, and sort of, I used to reserve books to be pristine on the shelf. Now I realize, no, that's my study guide, because I'm going to listen to the info and I want to be able to come back to it and go to the really good section. So that would be, again, one of these upgrade your skills moments is, 168 hours would be a great book to sort of start diving into what you don't know, follow you on LinkedIn, things like that, and just really open up those questions that you need to get answers for. Having good questions is 90% of the of getting there anyways. The right questions get you to the right answers. So cool.
Well,
any famous last words, Chris?
Yeah,
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of dovetailing there anyway, but I always tell folks I may or may not be able to help, but I'm looking for good people to have conversations like this. I mean, John and I love doing exactly what we're doing and giving back as a whole. So reach out, contact, even if it's just a hey, high five virtual coffee or something like that. I'm in. I mean, that's how you
Perfect.
develop the network and get with people. So I appreciate the
Yeah.
opportunity.
No, I love that. And again, my big motto this year, Jeff Cross from Clean Facts Magazine will preach this to the choir as well. As he just loves it. As I keep saying, it's what's old is new again. As our world is changing around us, the human connection, the networking, again, do what grandpa used to do to run the business is the other little catchphrase I use a lot now. It's like we kind of got away from what centered us. A lot of people did in running a business. You'd go down to the barber shop and, there'd be the butcher and there'd be the other, and you'd sit around and chat or whatever, and know all of the other folks in town that did all the other work and stuff like that. And we kind of drifted away to this, Google ads and Google business profile will cover it for me. And we don't really need to know anybody. And, there's a lot more still to who you know versus what you know, and tap into the right worlds and the right resources and stuff like that. So, well, I appreciate your time. I will put all the show notes in. Anybody has any questions for Chris, any comments, then they share it in any of our show notes. We'll share it on to him, as we always say, as well. So definitely reach out. And yeah, thanks so much, Chris, for jumping on. I think this was really informative and helpful to this audience in a big way.
Yeah, great conversation. Thank you.